Welcome once again to the AI Assisted Organization podcast with Implement AI with myself, Piers, Linney, and my co-host Aalok, Shukla. We're both co-founders of Implement AI. So it's been another week of news. It's been a little bit slower, but there's been some big news actually, rather than lots of little pieces of news. So we're going to go through quite a bit about our event last week as well, or this week. Time flies. Where we had, I think it was over 40 people, an event both physically, mostly physically, but also some virtually as well. We're going to talk a bit about what we learned from that event as well, and the usual things we're going to cover, a bit of AI news, some big news from ChatGPT as well. So, as always, let's get into it. So, Aalok, we had an event last week. We were talking about it on the pod and also on LinkedIn and various platforms. And we had, I think it was 40 delegates. So talk us through what you think. Talk us through the event, and then talk us through what you think we learned.
No, absolutely. So it was a great event. There was like 40 plus business owners. Some attended digitally, some attended physically. We've even had people buy the digital pass after the event because they saw the response on LinkedIn. And then the key thing was it was a real mix of groups. We focused on SMEs and financial services, but we had people from all backgrounds, from recruitment, from health clinics to financial services, fund managers, really a big broad range of businesses. And what was really interesting was like we went through that whole program to kind of like in the morning, we started getting people up to speed on the state of AI, like where it is now, how fast it's changing, and where it's evolving. And then we started going into AI assisted workflows and specifically how you can implement it within your business. And I think that's the kind of more concrete bit that I want to kind of dig in a bit more on the podcast onto, because like the whole point is like the question is, what are the commercial and business applications of it? You gave one nice point where you were talking during the event about how there will be businesses which are only going to be like 3 employees and worth nearly $1 billion or whatever like this. And I was explaining an example of a M&A agency in Japan which specialized by having a unique data set of retiring business owners, because there in Japan, if there is no succession plan in place, businesses get closed and lost. And so some person had used AI to create a differentiated advantage and an almost seamless M&A experience for both parts of the party. So just showing and linking like concrete examples. And then we had other people where they were trying to understand how they could create unique tools, because that's another thing that we've seen. There's like the AI implementation within the organization to like streamline HR, recruitment, onboarding, training, all those things. But then there's the AI advantage where you might create a tool for your customers which might make it a lot easier for them to do different elements of their of whatever it is to be interacting with. Like we showed an example of a customer co-pilot where it was able to give guided medical advice but stay on the right side of not giving something which would be officially given by a doctor. And we also showed a medical example on the other side. And then we were explaining with different people different applications and how you could use that in accountancy, how you could use that in, let's just say, like property purchasing, how you could use it in financial planning, all the different areas. So I think the key thing is like all of these use cases, all of these opportunities, they are open, because essentially with an AI assisted organization, where the way you're going to go is you're going to have your proprietary data set, which is going to be captured over your meetings, your client consultations, your documentation, and then you want to have your own tuned LLMs which will then be able to interact with it and come from and unlock more opportunities. I mean, there was another example that we talked about previously where someone was working with different clients, and they might notice, let's say for example in financial services, where they might notice that one of the persons has one of their parents that's about to go into care, and they might have just mentioned it in passing in a conversation. And if you can't remember that piece of advice, you can't do anything. But if you knew that and that was captured in your database, you're also able to provide some kind of customized plan for them or some kind of like note to show you cared. Those things are what yield in increased goodwill and increased opportunities commercially. So I think the key thing we were kind of going with everyone is like, you need to start implementing now, because you need to start capturing your data and structuring it in a way that you can access it. And that's where, different databases and different structures and things come in place. But it was very interesting. And it was just very,
Well, I think
very
what I found interesting was the mix of organizations in
yeah.
terms of the attendees. So this ranged from, not quite one-man bands, but, small companies, 5 employees, So I think one had 1,500, and they're all sitting, in a room, and usually it's quite a different process, a different engagement for companies, from a small business to a reasonably large enterprise. Whereas with that event, because there were people sharing ideas, and it's completely new. But I think that what came across was that people now understand that the kind of the sort of hype cycle is sort of passing slightly. It's now more concrete, as you were saying, that what do we do today to implement this into our business?
It's 100% concrete. Yeah, it transitions and it infiltrates all parts of the organization. Anywhere there's data flowing, like another example we're talking about is phone calls, right? Every single phone call that comes in, you can have that analyzed by AI, either for missed opportunities or different elements. Same with outbound phone calls. And the thing is, if you're not capturing all this information, you're just leaking opportunity. So I think the key thing is like you have to like get your systems in place and decide, at what point do you want to like leverage this really.
But then, what seems to be happening though is that every software provider out there, listen, is basically saying now we're launching a new AI part of our service, or now our service has been augmented with AI. It's like putting .com after your company name, back in the late '90s, and that's confusing people because A, is it really AI, and then B, it's kind of like, well, are they doing that because they're adding value, or are they doing that because they're about to have their lunch eaten? Because you're going to be able to do a lot of this. And we'll come on to Code Interpreter shortly, but very soon it's something we were saying is that right now software or software as a service is you've got a need, an objective. You then have to translate that into sort of an architecture, a design that then needs code to be written, tested, the whole process, and then you deliver that, and then it does something, or you buy it off the shelf. Whereas now you sort of getting close to a world where you talk to technology,
Yeah.
ask it, tell it what you want, intent. Talked about this in the last pod, and it goes off and delivers a result for you. And in between the two, it writes all the code, and you don't need to think about it. And Engel was saying it's like a microwave. No one really knows, or most people don't know how all those flipping things work. But you know that you put a potato in, you press the button, and it gets warmed up. And that's the kind of world we're going to. A lot of organizations seem to be thinking, well, is this software right for me? And you made a good point, and something we kind of reiterated quite a lot is a lot of these sectors, there's lots of software vendors, even today, which I find amazing. They're kind of black boxes. There's no API. You can't access your own data. We were saying that anything like that now, you need to run away from.
No, and the thing is, like, it's not just about pieces of software. The key thing is your workflow, because the thing is that at the moment, let's say you've got like some part like an AI CRM, great, but the phone call, there's still no tracking or organization around that. And then the person capturing that data from the phone call, they may be making notes in a particular way, and they might have missed certain things. So the key thing is like having an augmented workflow which might involve the software or it might not, basically, right? Because the thing is, all the most interesting opportunities, what you have to think about is like, if everybody is doing something, that is not a differentiator. It's only when you're doing the other things that other people are not doing is where you can become a differentiator. And I was showing the example in the course of like how you now have the ability to leverage unstructured data or alternative data. So what that means, for example, is like on Facebook, as an example, right? Many people who don't have a Facebook profile, they never made one themselves, they actually have a Facebook profile because Facebook creates a shadow profile based on credit card transactions, geolocations, different things like this. And then what happens is they can marry your real profile to your shadow profile, and they've got much more detail and context about you. Now, in the same way, what you've got the opportunity to do is like from your meetings with clients, from your consultations, from the information that they give you, from even from, let's say, them interacting with different kind of customer co-pilot tools that you make to help them understand more about their legal elements or their financial elements or their health elements. You can understand their intents and their needs, and you can map that against what you're offering or could be offering to unlock different opportunities. So I think the key thing is you want to get more foundational where you have your own data and then you can build off that, basically.
Yeah, I think that's what I call perfect information resolution. Before he used to call it big data. He was like, make sure you capture the data because one day you might be able to use it. Well, that day's arrived. So you need to make sure that you're capturing the data. But now you can literally pull out insights that make a massive difference to your business because all these things mean you are, rinsing and squeezing every ounce of opportunity out of your business, or optimize your business ruthlessly, to grow or to minimize your cost, to please your customers, or to generate more revenue. And I think that came across. And one of the things we talked about, which I thought was quite interesting, was we compared, because people were sort of saying, well, I've got this technology, and people are quite lazy in terms of using it. Sort of ChatGPT, for example, it's just write me a blog about I don't know, tree surgery, and churn out something quite average. And you make a good point, is that you can't be average. So if, like you say, right now there's a sort of an asymmetric opportunity, because a lot of people aren't using this technology.
Yeah.
They're talking about it. They might be using it in the private life, privately. They're not really implementing the business properly. But some people are, and they're using it wholeheartedly. So there's a moment where you can have a competitive advantage today, but very soon, and you're seeing now Copilot's being launched in on Windows 11 to developers. It's coming soon. But you'll very soon this will be everywhere. It'll permeate everything. It'll pervade everything. So you've got to be able to use it better. You made a good point in the course, in the whole day, which was prompt engineering, for example, which might be like eFax one day, one of those transitional sort of technologies, or capabilities. But it's like a human, isn't it? Where if you turn up to a meeting and you've got no idea who you're meeting, and you enter the room, and you sit down in front of somebody, and you start having a conversation, you're going to be all over the map to know who are they, why we're here, what we're talking about. If you've done a day's research on why you're meeting, who they are, what they need, what they want, how you can work together, how you can add value, and you sit down in that meeting and start having a conversation, it's an entirely different conversation. And that really what prompt engineering is about. It's about
100%.
providing context. And what you're seeing now is the ability to provide context has gone from a couple of paragraphs to, you can drop in your entire company's documentation, or a Harry Potter novel.
No, I agree. And the thing is, like today, I was actually going a bit deeper into prompt engineering and databases, and the different ways that they could actually structure stuff. And that's always going to be there, because the thing is, for the average basic answer, there'll always be a kind of, like, let's call it like a standard answer, which will come from, let's say, the LLM, the tuned model with a temperature of 0, so it comes back with the most predictable answer. For example, it would be, my favorite food is, and then if you had a temperature of 0 and an average prompt.
So just explain temperatures. Not everyone's going to know what that means.
Okay, so temperature is basically like how creative the model is tuned to be in its answer, basically, right? So, for example, with a temperature of 0, where it's like the average of the average, if you say my favorite food is, it would answer pizza with a temperature of 0, for example. If you put the temperature up, it might say sushi or tacos, as an example, because maybe 5% of people say tacos, maybe 20% of people say sushi, but 75% of people say pizza. What I'm trying to say is that, like, your ability to like tune and customize your information, and how you kind of like ask the system and the LLM to sequentially do different things. As an example, in this training I was doing today, they were talking about, like, if you're trying to cook a meal and you cook all the ingredients at once versus you cook it in batches, like that's where it's like chaining of different elements together, you're going to get much better results. So I think, Piers, the more I look into this, the more I go into detail, there's always going to be a differentiator. Just like any field of human endeavor, the more effort and customization you put into something, the better your system's going to be. And really, I think that at the moment, that the key thing is not the technology. The key thing is having your data captured and structured in the right way, which can then be actioned upon. Because that's what differentiates. It's the quality of the questions you ask as a company from your team members, and the quality of how you're recording all that you can action upon that in a meaningful way for your customers. That's where it comes to. But what I was so excited with is like the power of the tools available. And like before, to kind of use and create systems like this, would have taken months, you understand, and now you can assemble these quite quickly. The question is just having the right data architecture and structures in place.
So I think let's come on to the sort of next point, which is kind of linked, which is what was interesting generally from what we're doing, and also interesting from the event, is you've got lots of different organizations, different sizes doing, they were kind of SMEs essentially. Some were quite big. They're mostly from the sort of financial services, professional services sector. There were people there from recruitment and various other sectors as well. And what was interesting is and it's kind of like how Implement AI, how we should structure our products, really was about how different organizations and different people with different, depending on risk averse you are, or what budget you've got, how big you are, how big your team is, how ambitious you are, what your plans are, is the ways in which they are engaging with AI. So you've got some that are, which is like anything else really, but some that are, I need to keep my finger on the pulse, and I want to do something. But I don't want to throw the kitchen sink at this because we've got other things to finish first. But I know there's an existential risk, and also from competitive, from being competed out of existence. And also, there's a huge advantages and opportunities. So some are kind of like tentatively dipping their toes. In the other extreme, you've got some clients of ours that are right. I get it. Let's build something new. We had what I mean. I won't mention it because it's their competitive advantage. But we had quite a big professional services organization the other day. Had a call, and they've got an entire part of their business, which is tens of millions, that they can almost, we think, completely automate using this technology. Not just automate it, make it materially in terms of orders of magnitude better in terms of the quality of the service and the cost of delivering it. So you've got this kind of like spectrum of engagement. I think eventually the idea is it all moves towards building something which is a huge competitive advantage. But that's coming across that people aren't sort of just looking. I mean, obviously it's self-selecting because people turn up to these events. Obviously they're there for a reason. But it is fascinating, isn't it? Just seeing how
It just
people
reflects.
really believe it can change their organization.
It just reflects the spectrum of entrepreneurs again, isn't it? Right? You have different entrepreneurs that will have been like employing digitization within their company to a different extent and different technologies. It really just comes down to that kind of mindset. But I think the key thing here is that there was that paper that you were sharing, the article from Goldman Sachs, wasn't it? The thing is, if it's not a hype cycle, if all the customers are interested in it and buying it, right? And if all the major providers are doing that, then that's actually a legitimate market need and demand. So right now, all the most progressive ones are, seeing the advantage that they can kind of like lead and move ahead with. But I think the key thing is going to come down to is like the kind of tools that you have access to now are insane. And the faster you start, applying your own kind of like strategy and momentum to it. And that's where we kind of came with, was like, we introduced a program at the event where it's like a 60-day program basically to help them gain momentum and kind of get further from there. Because the key thing is, if you know you're going to go down that road, you want to kind of do that in the most strategic way you possibly can, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it was like an intermediate step, isn't it, in terms of the programs we deliver. So let's move on from the event. So we are going to do other events. We're probably going to be doing one in the north of England, probably Manchester. We've both got a connection with the north because we're both from there, essentially.
Exactly.
So we're looking at doing other events probably after
September.
September now. Now, let's move on to ChatGPT Code Interpreter. Now, if you listen to our pod, you've probably heard me mention this on several occasions, talking about it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Well, the great news is it's here. So this essentially, if you are a ChatGPT Plus subscriber, which I have to say now is becoming the best, if you've got the money, it's becoming the best $20 a month that you're ever going to spend, basically, whether it's personally, for your business, or anything. So if you've got anything else that's costing you $20, you're not really using, can it and invest it in this. So essentially, you've got the ability to use a Bing, or it was turned off, which is a bit of news, because it's allowing people to get past media company paywalls.
Exactly, it's
So
returning.
I'm not sure where that is as of today. I haven't checked. And then you've got the plugins. Now, it's kind of a separate one now. So if you've got ChatGPT Plus, go into your settings and you'll see the option to turn on Code Interpreter, and it appears like a plugin. Now, what this does though, it's a game changer. So what it enables you to do is to analyze data, upload data, reasonably large files, and they're going to get bigger over time. So you can use it to do mathematics, although to be fair, in ChatGPT, I'd probably use the Wolfram Alpha plugin because it's better for sort of computational purposes. But it does. But the big news is it can write code. So you can. I mean, I was playing with it this morning, just testing it out because it's been quite hard to get onto the damn thing because it's been like oversubscribed. You can't get on there, and it's got limited compute. And basically, what I did, I went onto the UK government website, downloaded a load of companies' house information, companies, uploaded it, and it kind of said, right, this is what this data is, and it kind of knows. I said, okay, give me some insights. So automatically it starts telling me, okay, these are the UK companies. And it starts using this sort of SIC code. Now, most companies are private limited companies. So you get these kind of charts. And it was creating bar charts of what these companies do, how long they've been around, different types of company. And then I kind of said, well, exclude private limited companies. Let's dig into the other ones, which is sort of a smaller sample. Then it starts using automatically SIC codes. These are the codes you use to explain what sector your business is in, identify the sector a company is in or business. And it starts to use SIC codes. And generally, this is an enormous data set they uploaded. And already within minutes, I'm beginning to extract insights and learn something from it. So ChatGPT is now essentially a data visualization tool. And I used to work while I was a trustee of Nesta, massive innovation foundation, 600 million. And there was a whole department there, which was amazing what they did, which was about data visualization. And now you essentially have that capability at your fingertips for $20 a month.
Your very own data scientist. Your very own
Yeah.
data scientist. Like basically, like I remember, like if we want to kind of like analyze like large amounts of like customer data or information and different things, and like I would have to then organize the information and say what question I want to have it asked, and then even having the data cleaned up and put in the right way was critical, because the data scientist wouldn't do those things basically, and I think the key thing here is that like you can put any kind of data in and it will give you insights. You can talk with the data. You can ask it to like translate from one file into another file, create GIFs. You can get it to
But I love that. I love the image is right, isn't it? You can now talk to data.
yes,
It's not this enormous CSV file or spreadsheet or whatever format it's in, and you're looking at it, you're thinking, well, okay, how do I start to sort of wade through this? You can literally talk to a data set. That's brilliant.
I mean, the way I look at this is like basically having the tool to do that. It's like basically putting on night vision, like imagining a predator suddenly, like
Yeah, that's great.
no,
You're killing it. You're killing it with the metaphors today.
basically, like everyone is like dealing with touch, and you flip on night vision and you can see everything, and you can also map different things to
That's
it.
brilliant. I love it.
Like I think that the key thing is like do what other people are not doing. Start capturing your data, start analyzing it, and start asking, because you don't know what you don't know.
Or,
So
or, or, or just ask it to tell you something that you don't know, which
correct.
is
That's my
which is
point.
counterintuitive. That's not normally how normally with data, unless you got it was all big data, wasn't it? And machine learning, where you normally with data you're using it to find something. Like you're trying to calculate the usual metrics. I did a podcast the other day about this, saying that metrics in some ways are kind of dead, because metrics are a lazy way of kind of distilling
But
data
that's like
into
a lagging
ratios you can
that's a lagging
understand.
metric. That helps you see the past. It's like trying to drive using the rear view mirror, right? But when you throw this onto it, you can then see the future. Like I saw an example from someone where they'd uploaded their LinkedIn data, and it was showing like when they had the most engagement on what days and different things. So that gives them opportunities to act in the future in a different way. So I think the key thing here is like flip on your night vision and just start looking for things which other people are not looking for, because the faster you start making changes and doing things, and as you talked about with Code Interpreter, you can do so many different things. What was super interesting is I was listening to a really cool lecture over the weekend, and it was like they were talking about like how programmers will be will be rendered obsolete to a degree, and there was like, and the guy was saying, actually he was a very high level programmer, he was saying there's kind of two types of programming. There's basically one type which is like much more complex, understanding, let's say, foundational issues, and let's try and say like self-driving cars and things like that, for example, right? Trying to figure out like what is behind an occluded object and stuff. That's a whole different category, right? That's always going to kind of get needed for a degree for now. But the other type, which is basically translating business requirements into code, and he was kind of laughing about that. He said that is completely done by AI now. Basically, like I want a
And
framework.
that is what most software development is.
Yeah, and most boot camps teach that as well. So that is like the most commoditized thing basically. And he said in a very clever way. He said basically most of these tools like ChatGPT and like the different image generation tools basically means you've got someone from Fiverr who can do anything for you basically. But it's Fiverr level type stuff essentially. But things are increasing, and when you start mixing that Fiverr level capability with your own data and examples, you can do really powerful, punchy stuff basically. But
So this is the start of. I love that. I keep thinking about do you want to go onto the business battlefield without night vision? It's like boom. But this is a start now, isn't it, of where most code it becomes in the background. I mean, it's quite interesting if you go on a code interpreter and if you use a plugin or you upload some data and ask it to start analyzing the data for you, you can see, show the workings, and you click it
yes,
and it opens up a window and you can see it just writing code. Now, eventually, I kind of do that because I don't really understand code, but I just like to see it happening. But eventually, you won't see that. That you will just talk to the tech, and it will go off, and it'll write code. It'll have agents going off finding data. They will be doing different things to produce the answer that you're looking for, or produce an answer that you didn't know you were looking
Yeah,
for.
it could be a
And
chain.
this is the beginning. This is the thin end of a very fat wedge.
100%, and that's why you have like chained agents. Like, one will do one task and pass it on to the other one and do different things like this. You before you were only limited by creativity in, let's say, certain dimensions. Now, like with the ability to like do these things, to talk to data, to connect to systems, to generate an API, to create a browser plugin, all these sorts of things which can be done, so it can then analyze picture, text on your screen and different things. I mean, you're multidimensional now. People talk about like multimodal AI. This is multidimensional, basically, right? You're able to like interact between human systems, computer systems, and really, I think, honestly, like just get on with it. I
Well,
think.
we'll come on to that in a minute because there's some I'll talk about sentiment analysis. But just to finish on this is that so if you are using ChatGPT, our advice is to go or pay for it basically, and then access Code Interpreter, and then just start playing with it, start trying to
Start scratching the
understand
surface of
and
what's
scratching the
possible.
surface, and you're it's gonna blow your mind. And what's quite interesting, and again, this is not really, I'm not sure whether this is correct or not, but for the first time, usage of ChatGPT sort of plateaued and it dipped slightly. I've seen people are using it, and they're probably using it at a very sort of basic level, and they're not really understanding where they can take this technology. So what's quite interesting is going back to the battlefield is what you're going to find is that a lot of people have kind of gone in all guns blazing because sort of the news, and they don't really know how to use it. They don't really understand the context. I think you said earlier about doing your homework before you actually push the button. And there's still a window of opportunity as people kind of drift off slightly, where you can become an expert. You can embed this in your business. You can embed this in your life, never mind your business, and have that competitive personal advantage.
I mean, any kind of knowledge work, like you have to have this basically, because someone who's got that is going to be a profound advantage to you, right? And I think that's just the kind of key thing here. Really, it's like get it into your workflows. Don't think about software and things specifically. Just start getting it into your workflow. Start thinking, okay, how can our phone calls be managed this way? How can our meetings be managed this way? How
Yeah,
can our
because it's almost becoming. I
It's
don't
the
even know how
third
to say
plug,
that, but
Piers. I say
no, but
this
it's,
with
it's almost it's
electricity.
not technology, is it? It's like it's a co-pilot. It's someone so you talk to for help and assistance and guidance.
It's the third plug. You need electricity, you need Wi-Fi, you need intelligence, basically, right? Like that's what you need, to kind of get those things going.
So let's move on to which is really interesting, and we've been playing with this for a while. It's not quite AI of the week. I've got a better known one for that, but it's kind of showing you where things are going very quickly. So this is like Hume.ai, isn't it? So this is
Yes,
where we talk a lot about sentiment analysis and analyzing transcripts, but this is now next level, isn't it?
yeah, 100%. Like, so I've been looking into phone systems, smartphone systems, and basically like quite a lot to like because there's so many opportunities that can be uncovered by having analyzing the input of the phone call, how things went, the content of the phone call. But then I was looking at like how could we also analyze the sentiment and the emotion within it. So sentiment is like positive or negative. It's a bit crude, right? But how can you understand like um how interested someone is, how engaged, how curious, how unhappy, how disgusted, how neutral, like all these different elements. And this tool, Human.ai, is so interesting. Basically, you can do visual, so video analysis, and also audio analysis and combination analysis. So, for example, you can actually tell from someone's, like, let's say a pause. A slight facial expression, you could say like, okay, surprise, neutrality, disgust. So, I mean, if you're trying to like analyze which of your customers like the most likely to be referring and recommending to you, you can analyze all those different elements, and you can also then customize different solutions for people. And I think that like this is where that AI copilot for like any kind of phone opportunity, sales, consultation, discussion, training, you're just going to be in a different level. You understand? Like, and you can also then
It can understand human, and this is now you're measuring and reacting to human emotions, aren't you? Not
Correct.
just what people are saying, it's what they're not saying.
What they're
And that's
feeling.
what video allows you to do.
Exactly. So then you basically have a kind of like a good approximation of like what emotional states are being generated from your content and from your information, which then means that you can kind of guide down the direction of what you want to do. So like the crude things is like when you're talking, you think, okay, from neurolinguistic programming or whatever it is, does the person lean in? Are they engaging with you? Are they managing? That's one level of analysis. This gives
I
me
mean, humans do this. We do this naturally, don't we? Don't even think about it. It's body language. It's built into the way in
yeah, if
which
you
we
pay attention
communicate.
to it. But this allows you to do it at scale across like 100,000 people or whatever it is like this across your team. And then you could also understand, okay, which customers are seemingly neutral at the moment, which then would give you a figure of like who's more likely to churn, like who's showing greater skepticism in the calls, who is less likely to be satisfied in the future. These are all leading indicators, and that's the opportunity. It's to see what you can do in the future to change things, basically.
And also, if you sort of play that out, it means that if you understand not just if you understand not just sentiment, you understand the kind of emotional responses. It means that when you come to hyper personalizing content or
Exactly.
experiences or user journeys, then you're also on a different level because it's now being designed based on data that we never really had access to. Well, we had access; it was there. But we could never really capture it and utilize it.
And you want to talk about like night vision, right? Like for example, like in a different way, like so there's so many things that we cannot process from due to either us talking and focusing on our own output or due to the fact of the limitations of our visual field. So for example, there's this like medical tools where you can actually like look at a video call like this and it can actually spot my pulse rate because it can see the blood in my face perfusing, right? I can't spot
Right,
that.
it's almost like now we had the visual spectrum, which was the old world, and now we've got our night vision, and now you've got infrared, and now you've got X-ray. So
Correct.
you're looking at somebody with a whole different and whole
Correct.
new set of eyes.
And you could also then have a greater prediction than they would even state of like how they're going to respond, because many times I've been in a situation and someone said, what do you think? And then I'm kind of like thinking, and then they're like, you don't like it, do you? I'm like, I haven't said anything, you understand, like it's just, but they can tell from some of my facial expressions or this or that. And even before I've even, let's say, made up my mind, like people are evaluating. But honestly, it's so powerful
I
that
think Hume.ai, I signed up ages ago. Actually, it was in a beta. So if you haven't had a look at it, even just you don't want to play with, it, haven't got time, go and look at the website. It's quite interesting in terms of
the
how
clicks.
they map emotional response, isn't it? Because it is like you're saying, sentiment's almost sort of X-Y axis. This is sort of three-dimensional, and,
Correct.
and each emotional response they measure in a different way. Each one's got its own sort of three or even four-dimensional sort of measurement aspect. Then they put it all together with all of them, and it becomes incredibly complicated. But the data you're extracting, you're benefiting from, is something which has never existed before.
And the thing is, what you can start doing is you can stack agents, like for example, because the world is nuanced. If you got, let's say, like the tone back of like not tone, the their temperature of the human, right? Like basically like how they are responding, how they're kind of like processing that information. And then that's then going, let's say, to an agent, which could then be tuned like based off this kind of feeling, customize the information to frame it in this way, basically. So if someone's like, let's say, more anxious, you have to use simpler words and phrasing and different things, like, for information that we followed up, or more reassuring and more concrete and more empathetic and all that kind of stuff. And this is why, like, for example, there was that study where they compared the responses from doctors to patients in a forum, basically, and when the patients were asking like kind of like questions which they were quite nervous about, and they found that the doctors' response were more empathetic. And it's because LLM systems are much better at extracting sentiments, tones, perceptions, and kind
Well,
of
they don't want to get home early, or they've got to go and play golf, and they're
they're
infinitely
objective. They're objective.
infinitely patient, aren't they?
Yeah, and you can write your prompt for that to literally say like extract like the sentiment, extract like the kind of like the feelings, frame based off that, like your output, which is going to like answer in a different way. So honestly, they can human better than humans.
Might use it for the kids. You can tell if they're pulling a fast one. Anyway, let's move on. We'll try and keep these to half an hour-ish. So let's just finish with AI of the week. Now, there's a million AIs, right? And I mean, my inbox, you could talk about hundreds of them, but there are some great ones, and they keep coming up for good reason. And one of the ones which is moving to the next level, which although it's still stuck in Discord, needs to sort that out because most people just aren't going to interact with it there, is Midjourney. So Midjourney is the text to image, one of the leading ones. You got Dali, Meta building some as well. Stable Diffusion have their own, the DreamWorks, so can go and play with that. But Midjourney is probably next level, and they've launched it's quite a while ago now, 5.2, but they keep rolling out sort of additional features in it. And one of the features which is quite amazing is you can create an image. I think upload an image, but definitely create an image. So it might be a picture of you or a dog, and you can zoom out. So suddenly now you can now zoom out and create a background. I think somebody did one ages ago actually, which the Nirvana cover, which is a baby in a swimming pool underwater, and they kind of zoomed out, and now it's in the sea somewhere with fish swimming around it. But now you can pan left or right. Not only that, you can pan to the left or right or zoom out. And there's a remix function in there where you can add further prompt. So pan. So it might be, I don't know, this baby swimming in the water, Nirvana album cover, and you can say pan to the right, but add a dolphin. So now it'll pan to the right, and there'll be a dolphin swimming in the water. So it means you can now create an image but add more context. But the point is just the power of it. And the other thing they brought in, which is really interesting, is the ability to have consistent style. So quite often, the sort of frustration with technology is every time you create an image, it was different. So often you see these sort of AI videos where every frame is slightly different. They have this kind of weird flickering effect because the kind of the drawing is always entirely. It might be a Viking, but it's a slightly different Viking in every frame. Now, what they're now getting to a point where you can create a corporate style, a personal style, and every image you create for that project, for that bit of marketing, is consistent, and that's really powerful. So that's my eye of the week.
No, it's exciting, and like there was something else I was going into quite deeply. Like, how are we not in a simulation right now? But that's another topic for another day.
Oh my, that's another podcast. I've done a few of those. So I'm off on a road trip. So we're going to be doing the pod from who knows anywhere between London and Albania and Slovenia. So that's going to be quite interesting. So I'll probably have some conversations along the way about this as well. But for now, that is the AI assisted podcast from Implement AI with myself, Piers Linney, my co-host and co-founder, Aalok Shukla. It's going to be the same time next week, but it will not be the same place. And thank you for listening.
Thank you.